Hello and welcome. Today we're taking a look at the two-lug / Doublestar / ACE stock mounting system, and specifically what I'm going to do is going to be adding a sling mount to this setup that I have on my M92. Now the system is a little weird. It's been around for a while, and I think it is to 1913 Picatinny as Keymod is to M-Lock, which is to say definitely not in favor, still being supported, has some benefits, but it definitely didn't win the arms race. But regardless, it is what I have on this particular one, and essentially it's just an adapter here with a couple of different threaded holes, and then onto that you can bolt either a stock, or if you wanted to add a side folding adapter, you can very easily do that, swap it around either side, and then just have this as an additional piece in the mix. So it is more modular than 1913 Picatinny in that, if you'll notice, 1913 stocks, they all clamp on, and then if they do fold, it's south of the clamp, and it's a separate entity, and it's zero standardization. Whereas this is basically just a folding mechanism with 4 holes drilled in it, and you can configure it however which way you want, whatever height. And so in that sense, I think that it's better. But one thing that this does not currently easily accommodate is a sling mount. So that's what we're doing today. I'm gonna do something similar as I did with the SB Tactical Triangle folding brace, in that I have another J-hook here. This is essentially a USGI sling adapter. It's readily available. They're like $6, and for our purposes, it's a nice solid sling loop that is captive, and we have essentially just a flat plate of steel. So what we are going to do is cut this J-hook off, flatten it out, make sure it's as flat as it needs to be, drill 2 holes in it, sandwich it in between the different adapters. So in this case, if I wanted to add it in between the stock and the rear mounting plate, I would just do that, and then just bolt through that from the backside into the threaded piece. Now I'm gonna add it in between at the side folding part so that it stays captive to the mount and it doesn't move, but the stock still folds. But we'll get to those details after we actually modify this thing so that it will work for our purposes. I'm also using the ACE adapter without the boss, which would otherwise require an additional cutout to accommodate. Step 1 is removing the actual hook and reducing it to a flat plate. I first tried a hacksaw and then just used a cutoff wheel. Next, I straightened out the plate using a vise and then an anvil to give myself as much material to work with as possible until I had a nice flat plate with an attached sling swivel. So I've got the adapter off the back here, and I use the middle row of the 3 options, and I know for sure that this is sort of where I want it to be with the sling mount that way of the adapter. That way it's not in the way of anything else that's mounted back here. So rather than like this, I will choose to do it like this. I'm going to clamp it in here, and then I'm going to mark it through the hole that I'm going to ultimately pass the screw through so that it's in the right spot. This is the kind of ugly way to do this, but regardless, the hole should be 0.625 inches center to center. Okay, that should work. Yes, so we can see part of the reason we wanted to straighten this guy out is that there's not a whole lot of room after you cut it, especially if you want it to fully hang off the other side. So it's going to be like that. And then after we do that, we'll bevel this to make it less of a sharp, jagged point. Once the holes were marked, I used a drill press to drill the holes and started test fitting everything together. Mine didn't fit great at first, so I had to oversize one of the holes to compensate, but with that done, I radiused the corners to prevent jagged edges peeking out and sandwiched it into the stack. Depending upon the particular mount that you have, you may need longer screws, but they are readily available 10/32 screws, so go to Home Depot. And once assembled, I now have a simple sling mount that, in my case, stays affixed to the receiver even when the stock folds. It's not overly bulky or in the way, which is exactly what I wanted. Obviously, we could move it to the other side of the adapter here and attach it basically to the stock, and then when we reconfigured it, it would be right here and would then mimic the Russian style configuration where you'd have a sling mount here and here, which would be fine, but I like it where it's static and consistent and a bit more stable, I think. So I'm going to leave it here. So yeah, that's what we got going on. Doesn't really add anything to the height. It fits in the same footprint as the rest of the adapters. It's a little bit lower, I guess, but it's not like in the way of your hand. If you happen to have one of these ACE two-lug, Doublestar, whatever style stocks, and you want an adapter, then you can do this. Like I said before, they make these adapters not only for AKs, but for all kinds of like bufferless ARs and Daewoo's and FALs and Galils and all kinds of stuff. So I think this modification would be applicable to any of them. Hopefully this was insightful or useful to you. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.